All right, well, welcome everybody back to the Subliminal Show. Today I have the honor of sitting down with Levi Lamberjack. But who is Levi? What does he do? He does a lot, kind of continuing with our theme of having creative individuals on the show. He creates a lot of music. He is an actor, as well as been involved in theater for a good chunk of his life. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he does a variety of things. Audio technician. He has a podcast himself. But a lot of things, balls that you juggle in the creative side of things. Is there anything else that I missed, or anything you'd want to add?
No, I think you covered it, man. I run around with my head in a swivel, so I just kind of have to figure out what I'm doing at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. So let's just start with, what are some of the creative projects that you're up to right now?
Yeah, so I'm always just I'm a big dreamer. Fortunately, I have a hard time saying no. So a lot of the things I do, there's some things, that I do that I just can't, I'm not able to sort of practice my own projects, but we have a lot of big things in the works. I'm working on 2 ginormous projects right now.
Okay.
One of which is I have a passion for creative people, but also people who want to be creative, who don't know, which route they want to take or what they want to do. And what I'm working with right now is getting an art collective rooted up into the specifically the South Bend community, but also surrounding areas and even up into Michigan and things like that. It's a collective that would involve visual artists, poets, musicians, and anybody of the like, really. It's sort of something that focuses on collaboration, on fellowship in the community, as well as sort of getting the creative juices flowing. There's an algorithm that I'm researching right now, which would actually pair an individual from each sort of sect into one group, and based off of their interests, based off of their genres, based off of their styles, things like that. And then from there, they can work together to create something, whatever that is.
That's incredible.
And apart from that, I'm looking at getting the podcast started up again eventually, once I get my actual equipment working. But I have a podcast called Life in Prison. Basically, I started it, that was kind of my COVID project. Basically, I interviewed people from all over the prison system. So that was former inmates, current inmates, officers, activists, families who believed that their loved one was wrongfully convicted, organizations. There's about, I think, 8 or 9 episodes right now, and we're looking at getting that going again. And I kind of I want it to be different. I want to make it a little more organized than last time. Because I know a lot more.
What are, if you think kind of in general, but what are some of the things that you've been able to learn through your creative projects?
I've learned, like I said, I sort of touched on this earlier, but I learned how to relate to people, especially in this day and age. Like creativity is something that we all have, but unfortunately, there are forces and there are people who kind of they don't see that, they don't necessarily believe it about themselves. And I think the one thing that I've learned is you have to be creative to be creative. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? It sounds sort of silly when you say it like that, but being creative, and putting out projects and things like that, it comes with a lot of mistakes. And another thing I say is that mistakes are essential.
Mm.
If we don't make mistakes, we're never going to learn and we're never going to grow.
Yeah.
And I think like creativity in a nutshell is thinking outside of the box. And something that I've tended to fall into in the past is, okay, I want to do what this person is doing.
Mm.
I want to create something that appeals to the people that this person appeals to.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one of my greatest musical inspirations is B.B. King, right?
Yeah.
So when I hear B.B. King play guitar, I'm like, wow, I want to play just like him. Well, I'll never play just like him, right?
Yeah.
There are things his fingers do that mine will never be able to.
Yeah.
But what I can do is I can take some of those licks, I can take some of those vocal runs, I can take some styles that he did,
mm-hmm.
and I can draw inspiration from it. But
yeah.
I've learned that if it's me doing it and I put the bulk of the work behind it, then it's mine. It's something that is unique to me.
Yeah.
Like even if I cover a song by whoever,
mm-hmm.
I make it my own, right?
Yeah.
I encourage people to make their own things. I encourage people to write their own songs, draw their own paintings, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But learning from other people is so essential in being creative.
Yeah.
But to make it truly your own, you've got to be creative to be creative.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe I spiraled. I don't know if that makes sense. But.
No, I think that really does. There is a time and a place, and it's not necessarily being a copycat or just doing things that someone else has already done, because that in and of itself is a work of art, and it's part of the learning process. And
Absolutely.
And yeah, the goal eventually is to create some level of originality and be able to do things that are unique and different. But there's always, you need to start somewhere, and
right.
Why not a good place to start is by imitating the people that you do enjoy and you do admire, the people you do want to strive after. This was something that I mentioned, I think, I forget which episode it was, but for some reason the conversation of like originality was brought up, and it was along the lines of like, in many ways, originality is really hard to find, because we always take inspirations from other people, and we're always being inspired by others. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing at all. I think
Right.
that's a beautiful thing, that we can learn and take and adapt from other people.
It is, and there's forgive me, I can't think of his name right now, but there's a philosopher who touches on that subject completely. I mean, there are a lot of people who say, you know what, individualism is much less individual than we think it is, right?
Yeah.
We're affected by our outside influences, right?
Mm-hmm.
The people that we grow up with, we're affected by them, whether negatively or positively.
Yeah.
Now, we can either A, accept that, or B, we can rebel. And how do we rebel? By surrounding ourselves with people that we want to be like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So while I think there's beauty in individualism, at least in my personal opinion, individualism, it isn't as individual as we think it is.
Yeah.
Because we learn from people, and I think that's beautiful. I'm not saying that's a negative thing at all.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes us unique, is that we've had so many different experiences with different people in different circumstances, that the genetics don't line up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful. Now, on the flip side of that, like, for example, I like to play guitar, I'm not the only person in the world that likes to play guitar. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing about me, like as an individual, that someone doesn't share, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's how we find our people. That's how we collaborate. That's how we express opinions. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I'd like to say, I'm the only person that's just like me.
Yeah.
And to some extent, like if you combine all my interests, you combine all of my personality traits, all of my trauma, all of my everything, like, yeah, I'm the only person that has these layers of things, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not the only person that's dealt with this one thing.
Yeah.
I'm not the only person that likes this one thing.
Yeah.
And seeking those people out who share those interests and those hobbies and those things with you is one of the best parts of life.
So kind of switching conversations a little bit, kind of more pouring into your songwriting. But you've written several songs. You're in the process of writing stuff for your new album. Could you just tell us a little bit about your inspiration for writing music?
Yeah, most of my music that I've ever written has all been about not personal situations that I've been in necessarily, but my thought process throughout several. I've written, if I'm being honest, I've written quite a few breakup songs. I've written some things about just being sad, being happy. I love writing about emotions, and I'm writing a song right now. It's called MASH. It's basically have you heard of the game MASH? Mansions, apartments, shacks, houses. Yeah. It's that one we did kind of as a kid where we kind of picked out everything that we wanted to do, and this is who we'd get married to. This is what we would live in. This is how many kids we would have. Yeah. I just that song, and I'm gonna pull up the lyrics here just to kind of refresh my memory. That song was about how life isn't necessarily what we make it.
Yeah.
There are things that there are outside forces that are constantly pushing us to change courses. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think this song sort of speaks to that in a way that's like, oh man, I had all these plans. Why is none of this coming to fruition? Like, why am I in this place where I was supposed to be here? Yeah. And I use MASH as kind of that example, right? Like there's a part that says this is specifically about like a girl that I had a crush on when I was in middle school or whatever. I really don't remember her name. No, that sounds bad, but whoever you are, if you're listening, I'm sorry. But it says, I never could not once resist putting her name on that list to give me hope of a far-off dream come true. I played the tape in my young mind, wishing I could come to find that I loved her and she loved me too. So basically, what I did was, with that game and with my dreams that I had, about where I was going to end up, what I was going to do, I sort of made an idol out of it, Yeah. And the problem that lie that was underlying that I didn't know at the time was because things weren't going the way that I specifically mapped it out, I was being left disappointed 110% of the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Not just 100%, 110%, because even when things weren't going bad, they still weren't going good. They weren't going the way I wanted. Yeah. Yeah. And I was just being left like completely disappointed, completely depressed, even just like, what am I doing? Not knowing where I'm going to end up and what I'm going to do was always such a, it was like such a heavy thing to because I honestly, there were a lot of things where like, well, I don't want to end up here. That's what I know. I don't want to end up in jail. I don't want to end up I don't want to be an abusive parent. I don't want to be single for the rest of my life. And so I was making up these dreams to kind of compensate for the fact that I don't know where my life is going to go.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that song, and it kind of just like, it was like, oh, I get it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I write these songs for me. And they kind of help me process what I'm going through. They kind of help me deal with some of the battles that I face in my mental health and in just everyday life. And it's been such a blessing to be able to write, to be able to feel like I can do that.
That's cool. Well, thank you for being willing to share that and offer some inside looks into the writing process. I always find it really exciting and interesting to figure out and learn how musicians write their music and where they get their inspiration from, because almost as unique as humans are, they are able to create this very unique story and be able to write and tell about it. And I absolutely love that you've been able to transition that into song form and be able to do something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest joys of my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, first, thank you for being willing to share all that and get into your story a little bit and open up a little bit about your process of songwriting, creativity, and yeah, I appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable.
It's a key to relating with people. So.
Yeah, absolutely. As a mental health therapist in training, I can vouch for that.
For sure.
Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and switch our conversation to kind of what we talked about in the beginning, kind of with your passion and desire, just in your interest in the prison system. And so if you could just start with kind of what's been your reason for this passion.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the prison system has sort of been lingering in my life for many years. I have a family member who's been in and out of prison my whole life, and who's actually currently in prison, and I really care for him and I love him. And so for me, I was like, okay, how do I, it was just sort of, it was something that I was like, I didn't know about, and so I sought after it. I got involved in high school. I was working for the election board as a precinct committeeman for local and state and federal elections. And you had to have two committeemen. One had to be a registered Republican, the other had to be a registered Democrat. Now, I'll just say my politics don't really line up with either, and they line up with both at the same time. But for the sake of this story, I'll tell you that I was on the Democratic side of that. So my Republican counterpart, his name is Steve Coaster. He's now a judge in the county that I grew up in. He was like, he's like a mentor to me. Like he's absolutely wonderful. Before he was a judge, he was the chief county prosecutor for Madison County in Indiana. And he gave me a summer job. Basically what I did was I rewrote job descriptions. And to do that, you actually have to see what the job is, And I was writing job descriptions for correctional officers, case managers, work release coordinators, supervisors, that, you know, everybody you can think of, kitchen staff, like all of it. And that required me to go on walkthroughs with them. That required me to watch them pass out meds and meals and things like that. And so I did that, and that actually led me to being a correctional officer for a year. And man, that's a hard job. During that job, I realized this system is designed for everybody to fail. And of course, I know people have different opinions, and I don't want to dig too much into that. But in my opinion, I was just like, you know, there's something wrong. There's something that we need to fix. And so I left that job very quickly, and this was at a point where this family member was still, you know, just kind of struggling in and out, addicted to substances, things like that. And so I decided, you know, I'm gonna look at this from a different perspective. I'm gonna find out from all sides what it is exactly and how we can perhaps look at making it better. I never considered myself to be an activist up until I realized, I'm interviewing a lot of activists. I'm talking to a lot of activists, and I'm also talking to a lot of former incarcerated individuals, and just people who are on the side of I want to make it better, or get rid of it. You know what I mean? So yeah, just all of that combined, it just sort of gave me a passion for reaching out to people who were incarcerated, making them know that, you know, you're not alone, you're a person, and also just saying, how can we set something up that is designed for people to succeed and not to fail.
Okay. And so what are some of the biggest assumptions or mistakes that people tend to make about the prison system?
Well, this is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but the biggest one is that people assume that it works. And I know that people are a lot more educated about the prison system now than they were, you know, 20 years ago. But we're realizing more and more that when people are incarcerated, they're not caged for being animals. They're caged and then turned into animals. And unfortunately, that's a hard truth that we live in today, in my opinion. Is just I interviewed the guy who I was talking about earlier, who set up that bill. His name is Five Mualim Ak, and he was in prison for 12 years. I think over 5 of which he spent in solitary confinement. And after 30 days, 3 months, he was hallucinating. He was his mind was just completely shattered and broken, and he became institutionalized very, very, very quickly. And once he was released, those effects don't go away, and it doesn't necessarily make him a better person. And like we were talking about earlier, but this is on the darker side of it, our surroundings affect us. And unfortunately for him, his surroundings were 3 brick walls and a metal door with a tiny, tiny little window. And he still has nightmares. He's been out of prison for how many years? I don't even know. Probably more than what he's been in. He's one of the biggest activists in New York City, but his mind will never be what it once was. Because of a mistake he made. You know what I mean? And I think that there are another hard reality is that there are some people who we cannot have roaming the streets. You know what I mean? And so what my goal was how do we deal with that? Because, you know, a lot of people ask me that. They were like, well, yeah, I mean, like, a lot of people are mistreated in prison, but what about like the serial killers, and what about people like child molesters and you know, rapists and things like that? And I'm like, you know, that's not a question someone could just answer. I mean, the prison system has been enveloped in our culture and our society since almost the beginning of time. Biblically, you know what I mean? Like, and unfortunately we can't just our Western thinking cannot function. How do we, you know, we're not going to hang people. We're not going to, you know, we're not going to do those things, but how do we deal with that? And that's a lifelong quest. And I think that we can, I don't think we'll ever be able to, we may be able to get it right sometime, but that's going to take generations at this point. But if we don't start, how will we finish? There's a lot of things that go into that. That's corruption of officers. How are you training your officers? How are you hiring your officers? I'll tell you, all of my training as a correctional officer, on the job. All of it. There was paperwork I had to sign, stuff like that, but most of my training was going in and doing it. Now, there were classes I had to take. I had to take CPR, I had to take defense tactics, which is interesting enough. It's where I learned how to fight. It was where I knew I could fight. I was like, oh, nice. But at the same time, it was like, what? Like, I'm not getting any sort of formal training. It's just on the job. But there's a lot of things that go into that. And so a lot of these drug users, they're not getting the proper education to be supported after they leave prison. I think leaving, you know, rehabilitating or reapplying yourself back into society is just as important, if not more important, than than rehab itself, rehabilitation. And like I said, it's just designed for them to fail.
I guess we'll wrap up with this question of what are some practical ways that people like me can help advocate for the prison system?
First of all, education is super important. Educate yourself. I mean, there's a project called the Prison Journalism Project, which is a great way to get to know the minds and the thoughts of people who are incarcerated. And I've been trying to get an interview with him forever. But education is the best way to advocate. And second of all, you know, there are petitions. There are petitions out there, especially change.org. You can find tons and tons and tons of them on wrongful convictions, on better facilities for incarcerated individuals. And tons of things like that. Also, there's a lot of documentaries out there that feature real life people who have gone through that. And also, just by talking to people, I think advocating is also communication, and I think educating yourselves on both sides. You don't want it to be biased. You want to hear the sides of people who are for it and people who are against it. And I think that is super important as well.
What the assumption was going in, and what we've continued to learn and prove, is that when you can sit down and listen to someone and be able to hear their perspective, you truly gain so much more insight than making these quick snap judgments, and often leads to just simple misunderstandings that blow way out of proportion. And there needs to be that space to meet in the middle and have that conversation. So absolutely. All right, well thank you, Levi, for being willing to come on and talk with us. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to shout out? Just locations people could find you?
So I have, like I said, I have music on Spotify and Apple Music and everything. Levi Lamberjack. I'm the only Levi Lamberjack on planet Earth, so it'd be pretty easy to find me. I've been blessed with it.
Okay.
But check out the podcast. I have an Instagram. It's at Levi J Lamberjack, and just keep learning. That's what I would say. Is life is about learning, and it's about communicating with people who are like and not so much like you. Absolutely, yeah. And I have an email actually that I like to get people to send questions stuff to. It's
okay.
Levi Lamberjack work WORK @gmail.com, and that way I love getting questions from people who want to talk about that sort of thing. So
yeah, once again, thank you for being on here. All of those links that Levi mentioned. Levi's creativity is out there. His passion and love for the world is out there, and it's very clear. And so I feel super honored to be able to sit down and talk with him. And but yeah, so thank you guys for watching and listening, whatever you guys are at. As you know, we're on pretty much any podcast platform. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Find us, subscribe, like all the fun things. But yeah, so thanks guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.